She pulled me into that living room right there and sat me down and said, "Kadrian, there's been an accident."
You know, life is like a 1,000-piece puzzle, and we only see a few of those pieces put together. It was about 15 years ago that this accident happened.
That morning of April 29th, 2008, my dad and I were actually sitting at this very kitchen table, and I had the daily devotion read to me that day. And as I headed out that door, he said to me, "Goodbye, Kadrian, I'll see you tonight." When I came back that day, I remember very distinctly seeing a lot of vehicles in my driveway. And when I walked through that door, I saw these neighbors that never came and visited. She pulled me into that living room right there and sat me down and said, "Kadrian, there's been an accident." I was 10 years old at the time. Dad was at the neighbor's house a couple miles down the road, and actually he had just gotten into farming a year prior to that. Dad had been a rancher his whole life, and in Nebraska, farming and ranching is very, very different. My dad didn't know the dangers, the way that grain can take you, what we call the quicksand of the Midwest. The auger had quit working, and so he was having to grain back the rest of the grain out. There were about 500 bushels of grain left when he was in the bin, and there was only one other guy with him, a trucker, and the trucker had stepped away to go move the truck forward to finish out filling the truck, and when he came back, all he saw were my dad's hands. What happened is that an air pocket occurred in the grain, and basically creating what we would call a bridging entrapment. And because of that grain vac and the pressure and everything else that was there, essentially collapsing that grain on top of him and burying him in the process. This is the example of a bridging entrapment. So in this case, we have an air pocket in the corn. So when we have that air pocket in the corn, and we can't see it because it's buried by grain, what's gonna happen to him when he steps his weight on that? It's gonna pop. He disappears. He's not gonna be able to get out of that situation. A lot of rescue teams around here especially did not have the proper training or equipment for that particular situation. They actually had to bucket out, bucket by bucket, the last 500 bushels in order to get him out in that situation. I took that moment and took that experience, and I didn't want any other family or person to have to go through that. The lack of knowledge around grain and how dangerous it is, and the ag industry just being so much of that determination and grit to where they're just like, oh, we got to get the job done. Just having that mindset alone puts them so behind in the safety world.
I think it's important that we mention faith. I don't know how anyone can go through such a tragedy without having a deep faith.